Hello and welcome to Pick Up the Mic. We got a special edition from Harvest Original Podcast with me, Pastor Mike, lead pastor. We got Top Shelf Will because he has a great vocabulary over there, our executive pastor. But this is not a day for you and me, Will. This is a day because we have two guests. Sitting next to me is, you're in the dark. Can you see him on that camera, Sunshine? He just brings darkness with him. He's kind of like that
in the
dude
dark here. That'd be good.
Okay. This is Cody Lute. He goes to our Indiana campus. He's married to beautiful Miranda. They have a son named Theodore who they call Theo because they just like it. It sounds like God. This little guy, he doesn't mind picking up crayfish with his bare hands, and he's only how old?
3.5.
3.5.
Yep.
And they have Elliot, who we prayed into this world, special needs kid, but he had a heart issue, and everything went well. He's 1 year old and crawling just like he should be, and we're thankful to have you. Now, Cody, you have brought to us a guest from all the way across the pond. Do you want to introduce him real quickly and how you know him?
Yeah. So first, we're part of a SO team that we started up, and Aaron wanted to read some books, and it's like how to talk about Jesus without looking like an idiot. Another book, and his name is Andy Bannister.
It looks like this.
Yeah,
this is the book. Now I just go ahead and look like I look like an idiot, Andy. I don't know what your strategy is, but I just do that. But you've read this book?
That's correct. Yeah.
And you recommend it?
Yes, it's a great book.
Okay, and then he has like 3 or 4 books, but these are the 2 you have. This one's called
Have You Ever Wondered? Yeah, that's another good book.
And this looks like it's you edited it, right, Andy, and has many authors.
I co-wrote and edited that one, so there's 10 different authors in that one, including at least one American. So there we are. We are very inclusive.
Well, that's very kind. They're throwing us a bone. We know you people can't do grammar, but we'll throw you a bone. We always expect the British are smarter than us, and even if you're not, you sound smarter, except for Mick Jagger. Who talk like this all the time? He can't do.
Oh, he's like he's in the room.
Thank you. So, Cody, you wanted Andy on why? And then we want to throw it to Andy and let's see what he says.
Okay, so, me personally, I struggle a lot talking to people about Jesus. And this title of this book just sells itself practically, And you just have so many good methods. And you're also the head of Solas. Is that how you pronounce it, correct?
Do you know what, Cody? Nobody knows. It's the Gaelic word for light. When I lived in Scotland, wherever I went and used the name, some dear old Scottish grandmother would come and say, "Och, you've pronounced it wrong, young man." I would then take her pronunciation and use it in the next church, and then a different Scottish granny would correct me back to the original pronunciation. Yeah. So my conclusion is nobody in the world knows how Scots Gaelic is pronounced.
Or Scottish grannies are just tough on you.
Well, they're feisty. They're fierce, man.
So we're hoping
I digress.
Oh, you're good. So we're hoping you get people excited to potentially join the SO team. And even just like give us maybe some methods. Here are
before we throw it to him, because he's going to get the lion's share of the time.
Okay.
What about your own testimony? You said you were afraid. Are you still afraid? Have you put into practice anything you learned in the book? And
so I've only been talking to people probably like maybe a handful of times so far. So in that beginning stage, I'm trying to work through those fears. It's definitely a big part of it. I've been using like gospel tracts. That's one way. That way I don't have to talk as much, but I'm slowly building the courage up to even.
Why not just sit back and go to church and let someone else do it?
Well, because with the Great Commission, we're called to go evangelize and make disciples. So I just feel like that's a calling we all should answer at some point in our life, and I feel like this is the point in mine where I want to do that.
Would you call yourself naturally outgoing, the center of every party?
Once I get comfortable, I'm a little bit outgoing, but not the center of every party. That's for sure.
So I'm making a point is that Cody, you've been moved by Christ. To share Christ.
That's correct, yeah.
And you took a step by faith.
Yep.
And you're an ordinary guy.
Yeah, super ordinary.
And has Christ worked through you, spreading his word?
Yeah, I believe I touched some people so far, and hopefully I can continue to do that and talk to more people and get better at it, get more comfortable with it, and then
all right.
Keep going.
Well, let's throw it to you, Andy. What should we know about... No, we're going to sell the book. Buy the book, everybody. But this isn't about buying the book. We called him. He didn't call us for an author tour. But what is the content? What's the gold that you have for us that will help us to share Christ?
That's a great question, Mike. So here, the big backstory is, in my early 20s, I was very similar to you, Cody. So I talk about this in the book. My first job, I worked for a hospital. I worked for the health service in the UK. Loved my job, loved my colleagues. It was a great place to work. But I was very much an undercover Christian. In the outside of work, very active in my faith, active in my church. Inside work, I just said nothing. I was terrified, absolutely terrified. Terrified I'd look like an idiot. Terrified I'd make God look like an idiot. Terrified of just getting fired. And above all, getting terrified of being asked questions I couldn't answer. So I said nothing. And so the big story, I guess, is that I wanted to write a book that if I could send through a wormhole in time and give to my 25-year-old self, I could do it. This is the book that I wish had been around then. I wanted something practical. I wanted something that didn't use big words. Like the word evangelism doesn't even turn up on the cover, because some people hear that word and think it isn't for them. And so that was what I was aiming at, something that's down to earth, practical. And my goal really was that someone like, you, Cody, or anybody really would pick it up and go, oh man, I could do that. Well, be careful. We need the Holy Spirit. But someone could pick it up and go, I could do this with God working through me. Because I think a lot of people I meet sort of come to the whole evangelism question, or they go, well, I'm not an evangelist. I'm so grateful for other people in my church who are. And I want to get people excited to go, no, we're not all called to be like the big gift of evangelists. There are some of us who are called to that, others aren't, but we're all called to be evangelists with a little e, because we've all got people around us who we may be the only Christian they meet, and that's part of the reason why we're all called to share the gospel, not just because of Matthew 28, but because there'll be people, that every listener who's a Christian listening to this, there will be people in your life, friends, family, neighbors, who you may be the only genuine, real follower of Jesus they know, and if you don't step up and share Christ with them in a way that's appropriate to you, we're not all called to do it the same way, they may never hear. As it says in the scriptures, right? How are they going to hear unless somebody tells them, somebody goes? So that's why I wrote the book, to make it feel a lot more doable and a lot more accessible. And I wanted to give people practical tools that people think, if Andy Bannister, that idiot Brit, can do it, any idiot can do it.
Well, Andy, what
you laugh.
could you?
Two of you laughed. I took
spe-
notes.
Yes, you're telling jokes. We get them. We like Monty Python. We studied. Listen, could you give us
absolutely? He does. Monty Python sends up in the book. There are some Monty Python footnotes. If you look.
I've got to read it now. Well, could you give us the distinction between Biggie Evangelist and Little, since you brought that up?
Yeah, let's talk about that. So I talk in the book, actually, one of the things that disempowered me, Mike, when I was younger, was I remember when good old Billy Graham came to London. He came in 1989 to Crystal Palace football stadium up the road from me. We took a coach from church. It was amazing. There were thousands of people packed in. And then Billy stood up and he preached what, to me, as like a 17-year-old, because when you're a 17-year-old, you know everything, right? He preached this sermon that I thought, well, that's not very impressive. That's a bit bland. And I genuinely sat there thinking, this is going to be depressing, because he's going to make an appeal. No one's going to go forward. And all the world newspapers the next day will go, London, most unspiritual city in the world. And my home city would be, ridiculed. And he makes the appeal, and thousands of people went forward. I remember sitting there thinking,
how did that work?
How did that work? And also, my takeaway was, okay, you can only do evangelism if you have this incredible gifting. You have to be like Billy Graham and have this incredible Holy Spirit power, such that it's so obviously the Spirit, not you. Most of us don't. So praise the Lord for Billy Graham, because I can't do what he did. And it was only some years later when I began watching other Christian friends around me at church who were more natural evangelists, but like me, just ordinary men and women, that I began going, oh, actually, no, I've missed something here. Some people are called to be like Billy Graham. We need those people. We need the pastors who can stand on a big stage and be used that way. That is so crucial. But we also need the men and women who can talk to the ones, the twos, who can befriend people, and God can work through. And of course, we see both models in Scripture, don't we? We kind of see, that's the beautiful thing about the New Testament. You have different types of evangelism. There's Peter, day of Pentecost, preaching to thousands. But then you have people talking to the ones and the twos and the friends. Think of, sort of Philip when he comes alongside the Ethiopian eunuch and have that one-to-one conversation, and, God works through Philip. So you literally have the gospel shared one-to-one. You have the gospel shared, 5,000 or whatever it is to one. And I love the fact that the New Testament offers both models and says, you're not all called to the same thing.
Yeah, I remember a statistic that said no matter what you do, and I'm a pastor, so I take it from that point of view, only between 2 to 5% of your people will ever share the gospel with anyone. And a good deal of sermons are making people feel guilty for not sharing the gospel, which I try not to do. I tell them, bring them to church. I'll share the gospel. Try to make it easy. I like what you're trying to do is get in the middle and say, okay, let's raise that percentage. What kind of opportunities do people have, say, at work?
Yeah.
I mean, there's stranger. You could just walk up to a stranger. That's one kind of evangelism, probably the most intimidating. What about
although the thing about that, Mike, the one thing I will say about that, you are right, that is intimidating. The one advantage with that, the one plus there, is that if you do make a total dog's breakfast of it, you may never see that person again. So you talk to the person who's sitting next on a flight, it goes badly wrong, at least you can run away and go, I will never see that person in my life again. And, for most of us, I think God calls us to reach the people immediately around us. So one of the first things I talk about when I try to train on this, and there's stuff on this in the book, a great starting point is to look around and go, okay, who are the non-Christians in my life? Is it my work colleagues? Is it my next door neighbors? Is it my family, if you're the only Christian in your family? Who are the people around you who are most likely going to be the people the Lord would have you reach, is the first thing. And then you could start, then the next step is start praying. Actually, we moved to the house where we live now. We moved here 3 years ago. And one of the first things we did, I've always meant to do this in previous houses, and I feel very unspiritual because we've forgotten to do it. This time we remembered. First thing we started doing when we arrived was praying for our neighbours. And for the first year, you didn't see anything happen. But then in years 2 and 3, we now have 3 of them coming to church. And what we found, when you prayed regularly, God created the opportunities. Just natural conversations opened up through which it was very natural. And what you say there about inviting to church, sometimes that is the simplest form of things. One of the things we do here a lot that we find very easy, and I'm sure it's the same in your country, Christmas is an amazing opportunity because lots of people still go to church at Christmas. So our next door neighbours, that's how we started with the family on the left of us. That was our first, we saw God work. And we started just with, hey, you've got a Christmas service coming up in a couple of weeks' time. Would you like to come? Mm-hmm. You were like, yes, we would. Mm-hmm. And it started from there. And then one final thought on this, I'll throw it back to you. If you don't have many non-Christian friends, another good way of making some is to prayerfully look over your life and go, okay, what are my interests? What do I enjoy doing? If you enjoy playing sport, don't join the church, whatever it is, golf club
softball
or tennis club, whatever sport you're into. Go and join the one in the community. Go to the local gym if you're a working out person. If you're an older person, you'll say, well, my hobbies are like perhaps arts and crafts. Again, don't start a knitting club at church. Go and find something in your community, because then what you'll have is something in common. And you'll build friendships because you're doing a common interest. Mm-hmm. And then, then be praying, okay, Lord, how can I show my faith there? So you can use your hobbies and your interests as a very natural way, I think, to start evangelism. Sometimes we make it harder than it is. Like, we imagine we've got to go out and recruit random strangers on the street. And some of us are called to do that. But actually, it's much easier to find people who are like you and then get to know them. And then as you talk about your life, say, well, I'm Christian. I go to church. Hey, Christmas is coming. Why don't you come?
So, thank you. How, in your own life, you said there was a time when you were very intimidated, and so you tackled that, which means you probably have a job besides ministry. I don't know if you still do. Now you're an author. Maybe you did. What changed in your life when you took that step out and faced the monster of fear there? Well,
to answer the first bit first, I'm now a full-time ministry like you. I'm a full-time evangelist. So that is a wonderful opportunity.
You went from little E to big E.
Yeah, I'm sure you'd say, well, not a big E, a medium-sized E. I'm only 5'8". 5'8". But you'd probably say being a minister is a great joy. The downside to Christian ministry is it's much harder to meet non-Christians because unless you're in a very liberal church or your colleagues are believers. That's not an advert to go and join your
He fits in great here.
Yeah, you do great here. I mean, you're perfect. You've picked up the flavor of our church.
For us, it's been things like next door neighbours. We've really worked hard to get to know those around us. That's the way to do it. What changed me was one particular conversation. We had just moved to Canada back in the 2000s. We lived there for some years. And I met a guy in my church there who became a good friend of mine. He was a doctor. And very early on in one of our conversations, he said, I love being a doctor and a Christian. There are so many amazing opportunities for evangelism. And he talked about how he prayed with patients, had talked about his faith with patients, had led patients to Christ. Now, Canada, as you Americans know, is so liberal, it's not funny. And so I found myself thinking, well, how are you doing this, not getting fired? Because they've got public medicine, right? He's a government employee. And I thought, in the UK, you try that, you get fired. So I said to him, how have you not gotten fired? And he said, well, Andy, when I've got a patient in my surgery who's going through something in their life, I'll do a little life audit. I'll say, how's your diet? Are you eating properly? Exercise? You're exercising properly? He said, I'll do a few of those. And the last one I'll throw in is, tell me about spirituality. You're making space for that. And he said, usually the patient then says, spirituality, what do you mean, doctor? And people will say, well, some people do yoga, some people meditate. I'm a Christian, though. I read the Bible, pray, go to church, those kind of things. And Pete said, the majority of patients will ask me a follow-up, like, pray, how does that work? Or which church do you go to? Mm-hmm. And he said, they're now asking me the questions, and I'm totally free to answer them without getting in trouble. And he's been doing that for 25 years. Amazing things have happened. And it was a light bulb moment, Mike, because I was like, it's questions. He's figured out that the key is asking the right questions and sowing the right questions. And then the other part of the job that joined up the picture for me was then I suddenly realized, when you look at the Gospels, Jesus does this all the time. He asks 307 questions in the Gospels. He replies to questions with questions. Questions are what we need to be focusing on.
Excellent.
And that's a big beating heart of the book too. So when I suddenly realized I need to be thinking about the right questions to ask at the right time in the right conversation, it was a game changer. Because I think I'd thought I have to memorize all of these, biblical truths and scripts and techniques, and then of course the person you're talking to doesn't give the next step in the script, right? They break it.
You're not supposed to say that.
So that was it. So yeah, it was my friend Pete at church in Toronto, and I owe a lot to him of making me see, there's a different way of doing this. Well, and that was the big change.
I want to ask Cody a question to get at to help you. Cody, you talked about.
You see, that's what you want. Yeah.
Cody, you wanted to get people involved in a SOW team.
That's
SOW
correct,
stands for S is what? S-O-W.
Spreading of the word is
Spreading of the word. And this started not by our pastors, but actually Aaron Brooks, our good buddy who's hiding in the shadows back there.
Correct. Yep. Aaron.
And you guys started by doing specific kind of ministry outreach. Could you explain those briefly to Andy so he could perhaps give us some tips on those situations?
So for the Pride Parade in Indiana, we did bottles of water and then gave them water, and then they asked them, have you ever heard of living water? And that was one method that we opened up the door to people.
Love that.
And then the other one we tried is at IUP. We're just walking around with another group of guys and just like pretty much cold starting just from conversations, just getting them, asking them if they know Jesus and all that.
Small local university.
Yes.
IUP.
Yeah. Indiana. Yeah. So anyways, that's pretty much it so far. We're still trying to get more opportunities to come and try to figure out how to do this, and do it more effectively and more comfortably.
So up to now, it hasn't really been your neighbors and coworkers. You're talking street evangelism.
That's correct.
College evangelism, event evangelism.
Yeah, which on the personal side of things, I do talk to like family members, friends, about God and stuff, and that kind of helps, gets me used to the conversations. But it seems like a lot of the things, like how in the beginning I've like focused on like the gospel, just get the gospel out, which I like your method is like get to know the person first, kind of see what they're thinking, why they think it, and then try to bring it back to the gospel. I think that's a really good way to go.
I love what you're doing in terms of the first contact stuff. One idea, I haven't tried this myself, but I thought I'd just share it kind of with you. So we've got quite a bit of family in Sweden. My wife is part Swedish. And I was over there last year and doing some work for a church. And the pastor said, one of the things that we have had quite good success with is pancake church. And I said, what on earth is pancake church? He said, well, in the winter when it's cold, we go out on the street. We used to give coffee out like you do in the water. He said, the downside to that is they can take the coffee and go. He said, but we bought ourselves a little stove, a little kind of hot plate, and we can cook like, a pancake for somebody. And but when they come and they get their free pancake, of course, we've got to ask them what they want on it and so forth, and we cook it. It's about a 3 or 4 minute process to make them their pancake. You've now got time to talk. And he said it was transformative because without saying, please wait, they have to wait to get their free snack. And I thought that was quite interesting. So I just wonder whether what you're doing there, I love the giving the water out and going into those places, that often Christians might shy away from. They're going, is there a way you can truly slow it down slightly, that they've just actually got to stop and wait to get the thing that you're you're giving out, like, I don't know, make an ice cream sundae, or, you know, in the summer, or do something that they're going to be forced to stay a little longer.
Tell you, with college students, pancakes would work because they like to eat free food.
Might have to try that.
Yeah, well, the Swedish thing, I love it. It's great. It's free food. It's a cold winter's day, so people are going to like a free thing. And I think my friend Stefan, we don't push it too hard, but we'll advertise, you know, the church service. It's Christmas, we're about Christmas coming up, and he said we have so many great conversations, and people are inclined to like you because you're making them a free pancake, kind of stuff. It's a natural thing to talk about. So he said it breaks the ice.
Yeah, that icebreaker definitely helps because things seem like they flow a lot more naturally instead of you trying to feel like you're a salesman trying to sell them a pitch. You know, like I like that idea a lot, actually. We might implement that one.
Yeah, so it's a case of contextualizing it, isn't it? What's the equivalent in your culture that people would love the idea of you giving away that for free, but it would take a little bit of time to, you know.
So do you, Andy, have any tips for? I mean, it could be combative if you go to a college, or it could be friendly, but it can be combative. But definitely a pride parade where there's a knee-jerk training in the culture to think Christians hate you, even though we don't. Do you have any tips for how to approach, let's say, evangelism in a potential
I mean, I've
setting?
done the Pride Parade, but I've done Speaker's Corner in London where there are loads of Muslims, and it's really quite, you know, very much in your face. A couple of things I've learned there that would probably apply. I think praying before you go and during to make sure that you keep your cool, because it can be easy to lose your rag, right? And then it's terrible, because if you get cross back, so if you've been insulted or they're rude to you, you know, to really just go, I'm just going to smile and just, you know, not react, can help. I think the other thing is to defuse it. If I was in the Pride setup, I've been in those kind of one-to-one setups where somebody says, "Oh, you Christians hate us." I think just to go, I'm really sorry you think that, but actually it's not true. This is why we're out giving free water. Would you like one? It's very hard to keep saying someone hates you if they're giving you free stuff. Yeah. And if they say, well, some Christians, you go, well, I'm not some Christians. I'm here loving you guys. I hope you have a good day. And, you know, I want to tell you the best news ever, which is Jesus. I'm not really interested in getting into the, you know, the moral stuff. That's for another time. The back of my mind, by the way, I didn't have to bring this out, but got a really good friend of mine who was an Australian atheist gay rights activist. It's quite an amazing conversion story. I think the Australian piece was the toughest thing for the Lord to do. And what was interesting, when he came to Christ, very dramatic conversion. What's
his name? Does he have a ministry?
David Bennett.
David what?
David Bennett. He's written a book called War of Loves, which Zondervan published, I think.
Thank you.
And David said, it's really interesting, that book. He says that it was 18 months from becoming a Christian to walking away from the gay lifestyle. And it wasn't Christians, by the way. It was as he read the Bible and fell more in love with Jesus, he began to realize they were not compatible. He said something to me once that I really found interesting, and it's helpful for us to think about as we engage in particularly that setting. He said, looking back now on sort of, you know, 10 years of following Christ, he said LGBT stuff, he said, for me, and he said for many others, it's not an evangelism issue, it's a discipleship issue. And we often mix the two up. You know, think of Zacchaeus in the Bible. You know, Jesus comes, goes to his house for tea. He doesn't say, sort your life out, Zacchaeus, then I'll come. He goes with him, and it's after the encounter that Zacchaeus changes his life. So sometimes we stumble because we think, man, I'm going to talk to somebody from that community. You know, the first thing I've got to do is talk about sexuality. No, you haven't. First thing I've got to do is talk about Jesus. Mm-hmm. And it's when they meet Jesus and there's transformation and the disordered love, to quote Augustine, is replaced with the correct love, but then the change will happen. And sometimes we cause all kinds of problems by expecting our friends to change before they've encountered the power to change.
That's excellent, and I appreciate that. Why go to the fight?
When we talk about that here often, why do you expect non-Christians to behave like Christians?
Yeah, they don't. Yeah, it's like apologetics. I've studied all this apologetics. Now argue with me.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So I think sometimes, you know what it is. I mean, I think, you know, you said you talked about them before on the show. I wonder whether sometimes, and gosh, it's quite tough to admit this to oneself, right? Is we like to be comfortable as Christians, perhaps a bit too much. We like comfort, and if we meet people who are very different to us, we get uncomfortable. And so in our brains, we're like, well, if they can just look more like us, I'm going to feel less awkward. Mm-hmm. And that's not a gospel thing at all. It's a human thing, by the way. It's like, I think the Lord smiles and goes, yeah, don't worry, you and everybody else. But of going, I love the fact that, you know, modeled for us in the New Testament, Jesus went where it wasn't comfortable. He went to difficult places, ultimately the cross. So in our Lord, we have modeled going where it's difficult. And then, with our kids, I've got a 13-year-old and a 10-year-old, and we're enjoying introducing them to great heroes of the past from missions. I love that the greatest missionary stories are men and women who went where it wasn't comfortable, whether it's William Carey, going to India or whoever. It's like, those missions legends are willing to go where it was difficult, dirty, complicated, hard, hostile, and God worked. So, we need to get a bit of backbone in us and.
Everybody matters. Everybody matters.
Everybody matters. Absolutely.
So I want to throw a few questions at you, if I could, that I'm curious about personally. One, how did you meet your wife, and what does she think about the step into ministry? Obviously, she supports it.
Yeah.
How long you been married?
Very good. So we've been married 27 years. So she deserves some kind of award for, long suffering.
Yeah.
So we met, it's a long and complicated story. The short answer is we were both involved with an organization that you've got over on that side of the pond too, Youth for Christ. Started actually by Billy Graham.
Yes,
so she was volunteering with them in her early 20s. I was running a YFC centre on the side as a sort of side project, and we met through some mutual friends, and it was pretty much love at first sight. We met on the 1st of April 1997. We were talking about marriage 6 weeks later, and I proposed on the 30th of August 1997. I like to model for men. Look, don't just memorize your wedding anniversary.
May, June, July, August, 5 months. When you
dated,
4 months.
So anyway.
And you met on April Fool's Day. Do you have April Fool's Day in Britain?
And she still went for it. So we married in 1998, and so 27 years. It took a while to have kids. We at first, it's funny, right? You look back, we had this naive idea that we would travel the world for the Lord and do great things, and kids would get in the way. And 14 years later, we decided that actually children would be a fun thing. So when she met me, I mean, bless her, when she met me, I was just coming out of full-time secular kind of work. I'd been working for the hospital. I described that. I was literally just coming out of that into full-time youth ministry, full-time youth work. And so she married me, I think, knowing she was like to be poor. And then after 3 years of that, I quit that job and went and did theological education. So she paid me through college, which was amazing because I also did a PhD. So she is long suffering.
Yes.
But then she's always loved to travel. So when the Lord called us to Canada, I mean, she was overjoyed because she'd always wanted to go to Canada. And also, I think if Astrid were here, she would say it's been amazing. She's loved the chance to travel, meet people. The kids and her come with me sometimes. So behind every man in ministry is a woman saying, "Come on, get on with it."
Well, she obviously was in ministry because she was with Youth for Christ, and so
she was exactly.
So she probably was waiting for you to hurry up and get going. Another question I have two really. By the way, you might not see the theme. This is just how my brain works. I was glancing through your book. What the heck is a crunchy Christian to you? Because that word means something to us. And you said don't be one. So I have not read your book. I have not read your book. He has.
So, okay, that's the chapter. That's I owe a non-Christian friend that title. So that's the chapter in the Idiot book that deals with the fact that we can do all the amazing things in evangelism, but if our character doesn't measure up to our words, people are going to run a mile. And we were on vacation a few years ago in the English Lake District, beautiful mountainous part of England where Americans like to go on holiday as well. And our kids were quite small at the time. I think my son was about 2, my daughter about 4. And we got to know this other family that we met at the local play park. Because kids is a great way to meet other families, right? Usually because I'm having to apologize for something my son has done to another kid.
Yes.
And we became friends. They weren't Christians, so we hung out a lot, and they found out we were Christians. We had quite a lot of conversations about across the week. And on the last night, Mike, over a curry, I think it was, the wife, whose name was Rhiannon, looked at us across the table. And she said, "I can't figure you two out." She said, "You are clearly very into this Jesus thing." That was her way to describe being a Christian. "You're into this Jesus thing." She said, "But you're not crunchy." And I remember saying, "Okay, I don't know. What does that mean?" She said, "Oh, crunchy Christians." I said, "I have no idea. That sounds like a cannibalistic breakfast cereal." And she said, No. The kind of Christians that every time you introduce a topic, there's always, it's like walking on eggshells because there's topics that'll be tutting and, getting upset with you. And if you dare to swear, they'll be like, giving you a totally bad look and everything. And so, but you guys are different. We've just been able to talk about this stuff normally. So yeah, I mean, I remember sort of saying I don't think we were that different. I think there were lots of Christians like us, but she'd obviously had a bad experience. But I love the phrase "crunchy Christians," so I just adopted it
So it's
for that
walking on
chapter.
eggshells.
It's funny because in America, crunchy means something different.
It's like hippie.
It means you're into nature, vitamins,
Oh, is it really?
holistic healing. So for us,
Yeah.
a crunchy Christian is the one who the baby has to be born with a midwife in the bathtub. They won't go to the hospital
Oh,
or get
well,
a
of course,
vaccine.
where you guys are in Pennsylvania, you're full of Mennonites, and they're pretty crunchy. So.
Crunchy here refers to granola.
Granola. Well, yeah, that's
versus-
what my first thought when this lady said crunchy. I did think actually, like that's where I thought breakfast cereal, some snack,
Yeah.
kind of thing. So no, it's never any phrase I never heard until a non-Christian friend used the phrase "crunchy Christians."
Okay.
And I thought it was excellent.
So
Because it came from a non-Christian, that was the beauty. It wasn't something I'd come up with. It was something.
And again, it goes back to it's you have your offense meter turned up too high,
Yes.
and it's this: why do you expect someone who's not a Christian to behave like a Christian?
Yes.
It's like, why are you offended? They're behaving like they're not a Christian.
Well,
That's what they
Yeah.
are.
that's what they are.
Also,
Sinners
by the
sin.
way, I don't know. Sorry to cut in very quickly, Will. I don't know if you've ever come across this. I've had this a few times where you meet people who actually I think are deliberately trying to be rude because they want to get a reaction. They're almost testing you.
You're going
I've
to
had
hell. You're
people
probably
that
going to
F
hell.
because they want you to go, "Oh, that's terrible. Stop swearing."
Yes.
And I remember one occasion saying to a friend of mine who was doing this for half the evening down the pub. I looked at him and I said, "I used to work in the health service. I've heard every word imaginable. So honestly, you're not going to shock me. So feel free to keep effing and blinding if you want to, but you're not going to shock me. I've heard it before." And he stopped. It was hilarious.
Well,
I think he was trying to get the kind of pious reaction.
there's no problem cutting off. That's what we have to do here, and you're on short time, so we want you to cut us off. But the what I'm hearing you say is, and I think it's true, as you probably know in America as it is in Britain, that people believe things about Christians because they don't know any.
Yeah.
You guys hate us. Well, you don't know. I remember more than once I've had a person in my life say, "Well, I don't like Christians, but you're okay." I'm like, "Oh, you think I'm better than the others? We're all the same, pretty much. You just don't know us."
Yeah, and I think a couple of things happen, doesn't it? I think sometimes people have genuinely had a bad experience
Yes.
with a church or a Christian, and I find when that happens, just apologise and go, "I'm sorry that happened to you. We're not all like that." And but the flip side is, as Christians, sometimes we can have suspicions of our non-Christian friends or our Muslim friends. It's good to reflect it works both ways.
Yeah, that's right.
Sometimes we as Christians assume that every single one of our non-Christian friends are out there, living wildly immoral lives and
that
sleeping
they
around,
don't wanna
murdering
talk
babies,
about.
getting drunk every night. But
Yeah.
that's not the case. There are some really nice people outside the church,
and
who just need Jesus.
they're open to spiritual conversations. We think they're
They
not. but
totally
they
are. Yeah.
Hey, listen, I want you. I know you got a few minutes left. Believe it or not, I'm going to take you in a different direction completely.
Right.
And if you'd be willing to entertain this, I have a love for C.S. Lewis. He helped me out when I went to college. I was a new Christian, and I was not a productive human in society, and I didn't think about religion, philosophy, education, nothing. But then I got saved, so I decided you better go to college and amount to something. And a C.S. Lewis essay that I was forced to read in a humanities class changed my thinking. And like I said, you come to love the British heritage from this side of the pond through the Christian lens. It's rich. Right now, you're up against a lot of stuff, it looks like, from here. I've never been to your country. I see the tension in London. The Islam, the grooming gangs, the Tommy Robinson, the fighting over the flags, the arresting of people for speaking out on social media.
Yeah.
I also see the Anglican Church is a mess. In fact, the Africans just said, "We're taking it over now. You guys aren't even."
I know.
The
You're
church.
speaking to an Anglican, by the way, so I was like, bring
I
it on.
figured that.
It's England's made enough mess of it. It's time for the Africans to have a go running the thing.
So I guess my question is, from your point of view, what's your point of view of, let's say, Christianity and your country, and what your hopes are, what perhaps your fears are, perhaps there's strategy. Just let you go on whatever you want to say. I'm sure it hits you in the heart.
Mike, what a question. So I would say this. I mean, let's start with some of the things that you raised. There are definite causes concern. I think there's a couple of things going on. I think that for a long time, the country has forgotten its spiritual kind of roots. I often say to non-Christian friends, we are a Christian country, even if you're not a Christian. The belief in free speech, human rights, all of those things that underpin what it means to be British are profoundly Christian. Those values didn't come from nowhere, and of course, it applies to you guys. When the settlers, when the Pilgrim Fathers and others came across the Atlantic, they took those values and then they were built into your constitution, and so that trend has continued. I think we've forgotten some of those things, and that's causing problems. In fact, somebody once said the UK. I forget who first used this phrase. We are a cut flower society, and that you've got the flowers from Christianity, but we've cut off the roots. There's no water there, and the question is, how long is the bouquet going to look all right before it just dies? That's a problem we're wrestling with. We've also had so many years now of mass migration, and again, that's a tricky issue. Same in your country, without taking a value position on how much is the right amount of migration. We're both. You're a country built on migration. We're a country that we're a country built on invasion. Everyone's invaded us. First it was the French, right. It was the Vikings, then it was whatever. But the point is, we've always had a mix. But in recent years, I think there's been a lot of Islam in that mix. And I think one of the problems we've had is that a lot of our politicians, I think, have naively assumed that all religions are essentially the same. So it doesn't matter, does it? Mm-hmm. But actually, it turns out it does matter. Mm-hmm. There's a reason why, if you look at any majority Muslim country, there's huge issues around human rights, women's rights, right of religious belief, and so on, because Islam is a very different ideology. Mm-hmm. So there are a lot of things for concern, a lot of things that we're praying into and hoping that the Lord has mercy on us as a nation. That's the downside. The plus side is the beginnings. Revival is too strong a word, but there is definitely something happening. In fact, one of our big Christian organizations here, the Bible Society, one of our oldest UK Christian organizations, put out a report a few months ago called The Quiet Revival, looking at a number of surveys that had shown that young people are going to church at a rate we haven't seen for decades. Amen. So particularly people aged sort of 16 through 25. And funnily enough, more men than women in that cohort. Number of reasons for what's going on there. I think the pandemic shook a lot of young people up. I think a lot of young people feel, well, actually, there's no hope anywhere. We've got, war in Ukraine. We've had the Middle East on fire, economic, crashes. Politicians clearly don't know what they're doing. It's all chaos. That's a very ripe, fertile, field for the seeds of the gospel to take root. So we're seeing quite a lot of exciting stuff going on. A lot of the work we do a lot of stuff on university campuses and in schools with young people. I would definitely say there's a spiritual openness there we haven't seen in a long time. So it's those two stories together, I would say, Mike. It's not all wonderful news. It's not all drastic. It's not all depressing news. What the future looks like, I don't know. What gives me hope, of course, we trust a God who's on the throne.
Amen.
And also, I think the other thing that's helpful is to remember, and the same would go for your context too, you can get very caught up in assuming, well, Christianity succeeds or falls on the state of my country. That's actually not true. China could take over the world. China could end up the next superpower. You guys could become Chinese. We could become Chinese. Doesn't mean the gospel's failed. It just means, one of those big civilizational shifts have come. I would miss the West. I think it's a wonderful thing, but it's not Christendom. And I think for those of us who love our politics and love our faith, just keeping those things a little bit separate, fighting for what's right, wading in, getting involved in society, those are all great things, but keeping our eyes fixed on Jesus. Because one of the things that also amazes me is when you look around the world, where the gospel seems to grow the most dramatically is where Christians are not in majority, and they're often persecuted. I just read an amazing book on the plane the other day with a collection of testimonies from everywhere from North Korea to China to Muslim countries in Africa, and God's people are doing wonders. So in the UK, do pray for us. Difficult and complex times, but overall, I'm a glasses half full person, because when you're on the coal face and you see God at work in individual lives, it gets you excited.
Well, I'm not a glass half full or a glass half empty. I'm like, go ahead and drink it because we can fill it up again. I'm that.
Oh, positive. I like that. That's a great one. I more of that.
So, well, I really appreciate that. I think we reflect that too. We're seeing a lot more young men, as you probably know, because you travel in America, and that same division, I would say, I think Will would agree with me, we were just talking about it, is people are saying, okay, the difficulties of the world are coming home now. You know, Americans generally have the idea, you do whatever you want, just don't bother me. But with the trans movement, with socialism invading our government, with all the as you said, the pandemic, the government overreaches, people are saying, listen, they are bothering me. What am I going to hold on to? And the men are coming to church, and we've seen that, and we've been excited about that. We can't exactly explain it, but we see the same trends, and we're happy about
I think
that.
you're right, and I think it's interesting. There's a whole number of things we could talk about on there. I think one place we saw this beginning was the whole Jordan Peterson phenomenon.
Absolutely.
When that kicked off a couple of years ago, I remember thinking, why is it that young men are sitting listening to some dude go on for 3 hours about, psychology and Genesis? Jordan doesn't float my boat, but there were millions of people watching him, so that was a point on the graph.
Yes.
And then I was in the USA for 3 months early this year. I had a sabbatical, so the family, we came over and just did lots of sightseeing and a little bit of speaking. And I was speaking at a university, I won't say where it was, not that far from your part of the world. And what was really interesting, I did an evening for them, and I was talking to the leader of the campus group, Campus Crusade, and she said to me, she said, we've got 4-year groups in this university. She said, my 4th year group is about, yay big, it's about sort of 50 or 60 students. 3rd year, about 70 or 80. 2nd year, about 100. So the 1st year, I've got 200 of them. I struggled to find a room for all of them. So she said, I don't know fully what that means, other than there is definitely this energy coming through from the younger ones. They are searching out spiritual things at a rate 4 times what the kids 3 years ahead of them are doing. So quite frankly, me and my colleagues are just working on serving them, sharing the gospel with them, and just as long as God keeps us going, it's exciting. And of course, then you had the Asbury thing a year or so ago, and other bits and pieces. So
the Asbury thing was big. I think the Charlie Kirk thing has overshadowed every movement we've ever had in America in my lifetime. It's been amazing. I've had people, we just baptized someone yesterday, and I had a guy come right to my church and said, man, I haven't been in church my whole life, but that really shook me up. And he was like 30 years old and vibrant, and I thought, I'm coming to church. I'm like, I have no idea that was going to have that effect, and it's amazing.
I think that, you're right. I think that's shaken a few things. I think what's interesting for talking to other American friends, that I think that's shaken things, whether the people who were shaken were for him or against him. I think it's one of those moments where even if you didn't agree with Charlie, people would go, but hang on, how have we got to a stage where people are being shot for their political opinions? What is happening? How have we got to a stage where we were once able to disagree with each other? You look back 20 years ago or so when politicians could at least, even as relatively Obama years, he and Bush could argue with each other without being rude to each other.
Yes.
So we've lost something in our culture, and I think a lot of people are going, what have we lost? And asking that question, and as you say, so the Charlie Kirk shooting, I think, showed that. And then I think the other thing that has happened over here too, I was talking to someone recently who, there was a lot of nonsense talked about Charlie. He was accused of saying things that he didn't say. Yes, he had a mouth on him, and he didn't always express things as best he might. But then I do say to people, he was doing it live in front of an audience without scripting it. I came across somebody who'd read lots of nasty things about him and just gone, oh, maybe I should go and look what this guy said. And just went to YouTube and typed in Charlie Kirk, and all the videos he saw were Charlie sharing his faith.
And he changed his mind.
This guy's journey towards faith. So I think actually, those who on the other side of the political divide have actually, not helped. Well, have helped the cause of the gospel by just talking rubbish. And then, I think a lot of people have gone, what's the real story? Same thing with Dawkins a few years ago. I've gotten 2 friends who came to faith because they heard Richard Dawkins mouthing off about God, and they said to themselves, okay, there has to be another side to this argument. I'm going to go and hear the other side.
Well, I think you're bringing up
the other side. They were persuaded.
I'm interrupting for the sake of your time, but I think you're bringing up the great.
I've got 10 minutes, by the way. We're okay. We've still got plenty of time.
Okay, the great, the printing press on steroids, which is the internet, has changed everything. And likewise, if I could steer into one of your areas of expertise, I recently watched a YouTube video where this guy said he was a Muslim-based believer. Now he's a believer in Christ. And,
Hallelujah.
And he just said, listen, Islam is losing people because of the internet, and not to Christianity necessarily, to agnosticism, to atheism.
Yeah, correct.
Like Hersey Ali, who did go to, I guess, atheism and then Christianity. But the internet can reach. He said this is the he was saying he thinks it's the end of Islam. Now I thought that was very interesting. I don't know if I'd go there, but he said that. And then I looked on X, and I looked up ex-Muslim, and man, a million dudes came up.
Loads of them, aren't there? Yeah, do you know what? I mean, put it this way, I'm not sure I'd go so far. Well, I mean, God can do anything he likes. I wouldn't go so far as saying...
No, I wouldn't either.
Come to an end. What I would say, your friend was absolutely right in that in the past, a couple of things the internet's done. If you wanted to if you were a Muslim and you had doubts, trying to explore those doubts was very tough because the community would turn on you. You know, your Muslim friends and family are not likely to go, yes, let's explore your doubts. You're just told, shut up and ask questions. The internet just means you can sit in your bedroom, if you're a Muslim teenager, Googling, problems with the Quran and finding amazing stuff, and particularly the testimony of ex-Muslims. And I've got a friend of mine who's a Yemeni, they came to Christ in Yemen. Great cost. That cost him his wife and his family. He's now a refugee in the UK. John is one of the most amazing evangelists I know. Has a massive Instagram following, gets millions of hits, and he can't return to his home country because they'll arrest him on sight. But that's someone who single-handedly has probably led thousands. And then the other thing that the internet does, Mike, is it lets former Muslims find each other. Again, if you left Islam, a couple of generations ago, it was a very lonely business, but now it's easy. There are groups, as you say, Twitter, X now, Facebook. You can meet up. Mm-hmm. You study the Bible together. So actually, the Muslims are connecting. Ex-Muslims are connecting, and so you get this situation now where you may know this: the fastest growing church in the world is in Iran. The Iranian church is the fastest.
Do you know much about that? We've heard.
I have many Iranian friends who are Christians. And they will tell me that what happens is that Iranians go in one of two directions. They either go into Marxism and they become, very hardcore materialistic atheists, or they become Christians. So, but it's the church there is growing hugely, and to go like here in the UK, we have many Iranian churches. I had the privilege last year; it was brilliant. I preached at one in translation, and it was a lovely story. They were hosted by there was an evangelical Anglican church in London. Who'd started hosting this group of Iranian believers in the basement, and so the English-speaking congregation would meet in the church, and the Iranians would meet in the basement. But over 5 years, the Iranians outgrew the English-speaking congregation. They grew so rapidly, and then, bless their hearts, the English-speaking congregation had been in that church for decades. Said, "Well, obviously, you guys now need the main building, and now the English guys meet in the basement.
Well done.
The Iranians meet upstairs." And I preached in translation, and I remember looking around, going, the average age here must be about 25, 30. Wow. These guys are on fire for Christ, and they're many of them are leading friends to Christ every week. It's just amazing what God is doing.
You're giving me
chills. Exciting time. Be encouraged. There's a book, I forget the name of the author. There's a book called A Wind in the House of Islam, which tells the story of what God is doing around the world today. A Wind in the House of Islam. I'll find it. I'm going to ask ChatGPT while we talk, and I'll tell you the author. A Wind in the House of Islam is the book that you want, and it is by ChatGPT has decided to go slow. Here it is. It is by wait for it. It's by David Garrison. There we go. And David has been studying trends in Islam and mission for years, and it's a brilliant book. It's slightly academic, but that's good because it's not just
Well, we're not as stupid as our accents make us sound.
It's more that I like it because it's not just people telling wild stories with wild numbers. He's got the data.
Excellent.
And he breaks what he does. He breaks the Muslim world into regions, and he said what's happening in like the Iranian region is slightly different to North Africa, and so on. But actually, many coming to Christ. So be very encouraged.
So I know I've hogged all the questions, but if these guys don't jump in, they're not going to get to ask. You've got to be bold around me. But as a pastor, what advice in general would you give to any pastor, any church, about how to promote evangelism among the people if you have it?
Yes.
If you don't, you can say, I never thought about it. That's fine with me.
Yeah. First advice I give for any pastor is let the two guys on your right speak, because they might have some wisdom too, you see. So.
Well, he's a pastor too.
Here's what I would...
You're our expert today.
I know. There's a few things I would say, Mike, straight away. The first thing I think is really helpful. Anything you could do to demystify evangelism, because so many people in your congregation are going to think it's some sort of magical gift that only a few have got. Anything you can do to make it feel more normal. That's different churches. Like I got a friend of mine who's a pastor in Scotland, and one of the things I saw him do.
No, No, he froze.
Lost him.
No, he froze. Well, Cody, if he comes back, you got any questions for him?
No, I think that was a really good one. That's like was kind of wanted to end on is like how can you start getting people excited about it? And
All right.
I think that's a perfect question.
Okay.
Unfortunate for him to freeze on though. Not
That's
too good.
okay. We can still talk. She can still record us. And what are your other thoughts and reflections so far?
It's like taking a lot. It seems like with him, it was nice to see that he's in reading it that he started off being nervous, because I think a lot of people don't realize that they see the end result where somebody's at and not the beginning of that. So that I think that gives a lot of people encouragement, including myself, to keep pushing through that nervousness to get to the point where Andy might be. So with that, it just...
Now, you're generally good with words, and I'm not trying to flatter you. I'm trying to make a point. There are people who really struggle with conversation. It's just not the way God made them. You might be saying, hey, that guy's good with words too. And I don't have an answer to this. I think he's coming back to say goodbye. Was that him? That click? Okay. So I'm just bringing it up. I don't expect you to have an answer. Hey, you came back to say goodbye.
I was literally mid-flow, and then you just vanished. Google Meet just threw me out.
Oh.
I don't know what.
Okay.
I know.
You froze on our end, so we had to.
Yeah,
reset.
well, I got some message about Google Meet has removed you from this meeting or something. So
Yeah.
maybe I said the wrong word.
So let's.
The Antichrist figured out we're here.
If you have time, why don't we just reset and ask that last question?
Ask
So
that question again, and let's do that. We've got
well,
time.
go ahead. Cody's going to ask it.
Yeah, how can you get people encouraged to do this evangelism thing? Like some people might be on the fence. They might not feel they're adequate. Like what are some words of encouragement you could give the people?
Yeah, great question, Cody. Anything a church can do to demystify evangelism. We talked about this at the start. Lots of people see the word evangelism, they think it's not for them. They think it's for like Christian superstars. Lots of ways of doing that. One way I've seen that works really well. There's a friend of mine who's a pastor in Scotland who I saw do this amazing thing where every week or two he gets a Christian in a different line of work, interviews them on stage as part of the service. How do you live out your faith at work? And you do that, year in, year out. Your congregation get to see, oh, look, ordinary people can do evangelism too. So I think that's really helpful, helping people see models of it. Secondly, I think, talk to your congregation as a church leader and try and figure out what are the actual stumbling blocks. What is it that's holding people back? And then try and address that, whether that's through the sermons you do, whether it's sort of extra teaching you put on. People are afraid of being asked a question they can't answer. There's some basic tools that you can teach people fairly straightforwardly. So I think that can really help. And then I think the other thing I would say, given that young people are where a lot of the passion is, let the young people take some of the lead on this. Let the young people let rip on evangelism. Right. Work with your young people. You've got youth pastor, work with youth pastor, and then get the young people to come back and tell the stories of what they're doing, because that will encourage the older people to go, oh my word, these teenagers are out sharing their faith on campus. I feel slightly guilty now, and that's not a bad thing. Yeah. But I'm not doing it at work. So those are just a few ways I think I've seen that could be really helpful. But demystifying it, make it seem more normal, more accessible.
All right. Well, let me finish by this, because I know you got your kids waiting, and we want.
They are waiting to play a board game, so they're very patient.
We want them. I want to give these two guys a chance for last questions, and I'd like you to just take a chance to. What do they say on trigonometry? I'll steal their question. What have we not asked you about that we should have asked you about? How about that'll be how you end?
Okay.
You guys, any final questions?
Yeah, I guess so. Like, we got one for you. What motivates you to keep going? Through pushing through all this. Like, what drives you?
Oh my word, that's a really good question. I think a couple of things. I would say ultimately, I love Jesus and I love people. So I think the gospel is the best news kind of ever. I think it might have been you, Mike, mentioned C.S. Lewis. My favorite C.S. Lewis quote is where Lewis said, "I believe in the gospel in the same way as I believe the sun has risen, not because I see it, but by I see everything else." So I love the fact that faith in Jesus changes everything. It lights up everything. Amen. And then, of course, if you take Jesus seriously, you're going to love people. And I find people interesting and fascinating. And by the way, that links to the previous question. Again, if you want to get better at evangelism, pray that God gives you an interest in people. The more you love talking to people, the easier evangelism comes, and so forth. So yeah, that's what I would say. Love God, love God, love Jesus, love people.
Awesome, I like it. And I guess if one more little question, did you get to use that ice pick?
That's why I didn't let him talk. He's taking over.
No, that's okay.
He's taking over.
You mentioned the ice pick in the Bible in the footnotes, I believe. Did you get to use it at all? Or are you still
I
hanging
missed that. What was that? Sorry.
the ice pick? Did you get to use it at all?
Oh, the ice pick. No, that you've now got people going. They're going to go and read the book now and see. No, embarrassingly, the ice pick in that story is still hanging up in my attic and hasn't been used. And my wife keeps saying, "Just sell it." And I'm like, "No, I will need it one day," and has not yet been used in anger. Crampons, yes. Ice axe, no.
Yes, when you're dead.
Now every listener is going, "What are they talking about?"
I don't know what you're talking about, but just
I
put
know, you
one
gotta
of your
read the book
kids'
now.
names on it now. When you're dead, that kid can have the ice.
Yeah. We're quite extreme in the UK. When we chop ice for like a drink, we don't just like use an ice crusher. We use an ice pick. That's what we do.
You guys are bad.
Believe anything.
Will?
Yeah, I'm going to steal a question from Cody, but I'm afraid it might be too long of an answer for here at the end. But special guidance for difficult family situations. Yeah. So I'm the only believing Christian not in my current household. I now have my own house because I'm married.
His wife is safe, thank God.
Yeah, my wife and my kids. But I like my parents or my siblings, right? I'm the weirdo Jesus freak.
It's tough, isn't it? I'm very blessed in that my parents are Christians. So I was raised in a Christian kind of home and so grateful for that. But my siblings, we've got one who's hanging on to faith by her fingernails and one who's probably an atheist. So, and that's tough. And I think the reason family's tough, you got to play the long game, right? You know, we talked earlier about, you know, if you meet someone on a one-off occasion and you make a mess of it, you never see them again. But family, you will see.
Well, we talk about it all the time here too. They knew you before.
And they knew you before. Well, a couple of thoughts there. Obviously, of course, that there's a slight pressure. Maybe it's a healthy pressure to ensure you're living your faith out. They see a difference. If they don't see a difference, they're going to cry hypocrisy. You know, you claim to be a Christian, but we knew you before. We knew you after. I don't see a change. So obviously, praying they see a change. Then I think the other thing, and it's tough, isn't it, Will, because it's so different for every person. It's trying to figure out what's the right rhythm of sharing your faith with your family. If you're doing it every time you see them, all you do is talk about Jesus, they're going to think you're a freak. And also they're going to go, you don't care about me. All you want to do is, you know, you see me as a project. But on the other hand, never saying anything is wrong as well. So it's figuring out and praying through and figuring out the relationship you have, and then not being afraid of doing it regularly, even with a smile and going, look, you know, we've talked about this before, but I'm going to talk about it again because I love you and I think this is the best thing ever. And then also, you know, trusting that God can move differently. So the first family member I mentioned, I for a long time thought she was an atheist, but actually God has been at work and there is progress there. And it's a conversation we had about 2 years ago where I found that was more going on than I realized. And I'd made the mistake of assuming because of the past that she was still in the same position. So don't assume that you know where your family are just because of a conversation you had last year. Allow them space to change. And that's obviously going to be tough for them because some of them might be feeling, well, if I change, you know, Will's going to say, aha, I told you so.
And I will say that.
I think if you love them and they know that you love them and you're in and you're really involved in the family, you're part of that and they can see that, then you're going to have you're a lot of the way there in terms of they're going to respect you enough that when you talk about stuff. But no, it's not easy. You know, just keep hanging in there, keep praying. And hopefully, as you say, they'll see the difference, not just in you, but in your family. Look at your parents, for example, look at you and see the relationship you've got with your wife and your kids. You know, it'd be worth praying that they see a difference there and wonder where that's come from.
Yeah, I like what you said at the beginning. It's a long game. Even Jesus, you know, his brothers said, hey, if you're the Messiah, why don't you go down to Jerusalem? They didn't believe either till the end. So, hey, what is it that we haven't asked you or talked about that we should?
Yeah, and I love that you stole that question from Trigonometry because I love that show.
Me too.
And by the way, there's an example of God moving. I don't know if you saw this, Mike. So Konstantin Kitin, who's one of the presenters of that, a Russian guy, moved to the UK with his family. You know, they fled the Soviet Union, and he now runs that show with his co-presenter. I saw a thing on Facebook the other day where I literally stopped and my jaw dropped because he put a comment. He was replying to somebody else, and he said, I guess, you know, when it comes to religious stuff, you know, I've always sort of said I'm not that interested, certainly not practicing. And he said, well, I say that, but we're now going to church once or twice a month.
Wow.
And I was like, what?
Wow.
And he kept the thread carried on. But
Joe Rogan's wife, I hear, started going to church.
Yeah, and there's a whole gang of them because there's a guy called Tom Holland who's a historian in the UK. So he became a Christian.
Tell the story. Me and Will know him, but tell everyone who's listening who that is.
So he's a very eminent historian. Wrote a book called Dominion a few years ago, looking at how the West is thoroughly Christian. And the process of writing that book came very close to faith, and then completed the journey. Then the chain continues because there's a brilliant Christian feminist writer. Well, not now Christian. She wasn't a Christian before. Feminist writer here, philosopher called Louise Perry, wrote a book called Against the Sexual Revolution. She's been on trigonometry. Well, she started going to church with Tom Holland a few years, and she's now a Christian and really quite talking about it quite rightly.
Yeah, the Tom Holland. If you guys are listening out there, look for him on podcasts. You don't even have to read his book if you don't want to read the book. I got it on Audible and listened to it. But,
so anyway, all that to say, so lots going on. I would say, gosh, there's so many things I might say here, Mike. It's tricky. I would say we are talking about it a bit more, but maybe not as much as we should. There's the whole issue around technology. We haven't talked about on this show because you've got social media, which has caused obviously immense damage in so many ways and still continues to. A lot of the tribalism that we're seeing in culture, I think, is caused by that. And Christians are not immune from that. It affects the context in which we're sharing the gospel. And then, of course, we've got the AI revolution happening, which is making, again, it brings real benefits, but there's a real danger that people are going to be shallow.
See, I like this guy.
Show him. You got to show him.
I don't know if you can see this. I don't know if you can see this.
You're off my camera. I'm not, what do you got?
Well, I don't know if you can see this. Can you see that?
He's got a board of things that he talks about too much.
These are the things I talk about too much, says.
Oh, right.
This is what my producer says, and Will. And one of them is AI.
And one of them is Islam.
And one of them is Islam.
There you go. Well, my next book is on AI, so there you go. So I'm thinking about it a lot. So yeah, without talking about it all the time, it changes. It's changing the culture in which we're operating, and as Christians, we've always got to keep one eye on the culture, not just where it is, but where it's going.
Yeah. It's hard right now, isn't it?
What's that? Sorry.
That's hard right now, isn't it?
It is because it's changing so. It's changing so fast. But I think, being aware of those things, because, again, I think those are things that unsettle people. And when people are unsettled, that's fertile soil for the gospel. The hardest people to reach in some ways are the comfortable and the well-off. When everything's easy, when life is difficult, people are far more spiritually open.
Something about a camel and a needle's eye there.
Yes, it was like, I'm sure Jesus said something about that, but there we are.
So, I hate to do this, but you haven't cut us off yet. You led to a question. How do you use social media wisely for the gospel then?
This will be my last question, and then I need to
that's
go.
It. Then we finish.
There'll be a bang at the door from a small child game.
They can come in and join us, and they could be on our podcast.
No, you don't want them. Trust me, not my son.
Oh, yes, that's what I want.
yeah. 10-year-old son's. So here we go. One of the bits of advice I give on social media, Mike, is I think that the first principle on social media is be normal. A lot of Christians blow it because they're weird on social media. The ones that breaks my heart, I've got a few friends who are like this, Christian conspiracy theories. So every post they have is something really weird, total madness. Yeah. And then there'll be a post on evidence for the resurrection. And I was like, if I was a non-Christian reading your feed, and I'm reading about the fact that, Joe Biden is controlled by aliens from Mars, and they're putting something in the water, and the earth is really flat, and then Jesus, I'm going to conclude it's all nuts.
Yes.
So rule one, be normal. Just do a nice mix of family and interesting stuff and weave Jesus into there. don't be a weirdo.
We can't help but think of people we actually know when you say that.
Secondly is we shouldn't have to be told this, but don't get sucked into the algorithm game of being rude about other people. The social media algorithms want to divide us. They want us to be yelling at the other side. Okay, look at these stupid pagans, look at these stupid liberals, whatever it is. That's purely you are being used by the algorithms. It's perfectly possible to totally disagree with somebody on almost everything, but still remember they are a child of God. So kindness goes a long way. And again, I've seen people come to faith that way. I've got a friend here in the UK who was he was hanging out some years ago on the Richard Dawkins discussion forums, and then he asked a question. He was an atheist, but he just asked a question. He critiqued something Richard had said, and then all these other guys jumped on him and were really rude. There was a Twitter mob, and there was a Christian stood up for him, and just defended him. And he said, I was so impressed by the way this guy treated me on social media, even though we were utterly different, that I began taking him a bit more seriously and watching what he was posting. And that is a journey that led to faith, by a Christian just being kind.
Amen.
So just, try and be winsome on social media. And then lastly, turn it off, actually. Know when to stop. There's always somebody wrong on the internet. And the problem with trying to use the internet for evangelism, you can be there at 3 a.m, and actually God's given you duties to your family and your church and your community. Use social media. It's a great opportunity, but also know when to shut the door and close it and go back to the real world.
Amen. That's a good way.
It looks like Will has got something. I could see Will has.
No, I think that was perfect.
Perfect ending.
I really thank you for your time. This has been great, and I think it's going to be very profitable to our congregation. I really appreciate it.
It's been great to be with you guys. Thank you so
Cody,
much.
thank you for bringing him up.
Yeah.
And discovering him. We appreciate it.
Yeah, Andy, can you tell listeners where can people find you? They want to look into you.
Yeah, so the best way to find me is you can either just go Google Andy Bannister Speaker, and that will find all my stuff. Or if you're good at remembering URLs, Solas, SOLAS, Solas-CPC, Center for Public Christianity.org.
Do the first one.
Well, no,
The first one's easy. Andy Bannister.
we have professionals here. She'll put a link
We'll
to
have
it.
Link in the show notes. That's
And
what we
in the
do.
description.
Do you know what? I'm a great believer. There's no such thing as bad as good podcasters. There's only good editors and producers. So
there's no question. Sunshine takes care of us.
Take my vote.
So your check is in the mail. What do we send?
That's very kind of you.
But what I will do is I'm going to buy some of these books and put them in our church
that's
book.
what we like to hear.
I'm going to put them in our church bookstore, and maybe someone will have mercy on you, Andy, and buy one.
That's fantastic. I look forward to the day.
Hey, give your best to your wife and kids now. We already love you as a brother in Christ. Be blessed. Thanks for taking the time.
Blessings to you guys too. Have a lovely rest of the day.
See ya. Take care,
See
Andy.
ya.
Thank you.
Cheers.